Hi everyone, I'm clearly confused, but that's also my name. We got jokes. Got jokes this episode. Welcome to Let's Animate, the series where I do some animation, I record it, and now I talk over it. If you saw the last episode, which I'm guessing you didn't, because I accidentally posted it at 4 in the morning, just if you're ever scheduling a YouTube video, just double check like the date and time you're setting it for, and look for a little box that says AM or PM. Just double check that. Just double check it. Anyway, so in the last episode, I discussed a little bit about how I wanted to experiment with this format, try some different things, see if I can make it a little more engaging, a little more interesting. I like this series, but I think I could do more. So expect for the next few episodes me just doing weird things. Like maybe I'll do a podcasty episode, maybe I'll do more of a video essay, maybe I really don't have any other ideas outside of that, but I'll think of something. Anyway, for this episode, I'm gonna try sticking to a single topic, and then hopefully that will be more engaging and appealing if I just stick to some singular issue as opposed to my typical ramble in every direction. And then just getting off topic and yada yada yada, you get the idea. But, what is my first topic? What am I going to talk about? I wanted to discuss Undertale being adapted into a movie. Now, not all of my Let's Animates are going to be about Undertale. In fact, I think this is probably going to be my last specific one. I wanted to do it because I knew if you were subscribed to me, you probably like Undertale. But I'm also kind of running out of things specifically to talk about in terms of Undertale and Undertale animations. But anyway, back to the subject at hand in terms of how would you adapt Undertale to a movie? I think it's an interesting idea, and it's been kind of eating away at the back of my mind for a long time now, especially because, adaptations are such a huge part of the media landscape. You got all the superhero movies, you got Harry Potter, you got Lord of the Rings, and that's just movies. Not even talking about things like TV. If you want to get into anime, so much of anime is just manga adaptations. It's like adaptations are everything, and it's kind of sad. Video games don't really have a, I don't want to say magnum opus, but they don't have the adaptation that everyone can point to and be like, oh, but that one's really good. Like, even before the sort of all the great superhero movies we got now, you could at least say oh, the original Batman movie, that was really great, or the Superman movies, you could point to those. But if you were talking about video game movies, people would be like Mortal Kombat. I think some people like the first Silent Hill movie. It's like saying oh, this is a good movie, ? They like it, but they don't love it. It's not like that perfect, oh, this is the movie. Which is a real shame. And this video is not specifically talking about that, why things like that fail. Maybe I'll touch on that here or there, but really it's just kind of a thought experiment about what are the sort of questions you need to answer when you are adapting something like a game. Because Hollywood's figured out how to adapt books and other media and things like that, and comic books, but they still don't quite understand games, and either that's because of something about the medium being different, or maybe it's because just not enough people that care about video games are working in Hollywood right at the moment, or at least people who, not people who have power at least. And I should also preface the fact that I'm not some sort of major screenwriter or worked on adaptations before. I'm just a man, just talking on the internet. So I just thought it would be fun to talk about. But all right, remember how I said I was going to stick to a single topic, and I'm like, what? 4 minutes in, still haven't discussed it. Anyway, the actual thing. So let's start with the bare basics of this, the minimum of sort of a adaptation. Who is the protagonist? Now, you might be saying, it's Frisk. Why are you even asking this question? He's gotta move on. But this is where things get kind of difficult, because yes, Frisk is the obvious choice. Frisk goes throughout the entire game, but Frisk has a lot of problems in terms of being a general movie protagonist. Let's start with the most obvious aspect of the fact that Frisk doesn't have a voice. I think there's maybe like a few dialogue options throughout the game, but for the most part, Frisk doesn't speak. Frisk is a silent protagonist. Largely just a player avatar, no personality, no expressions, nothing. Just sort of a character for players to project themselves onto. And I like that trope, but in terms of a movie protagonist, it doesn't quite work. You need that sort of personality, you need elements like that, and especially a character with no voice is really difficult. Not impossible. I mean, if you want to point to an example, look at someone like Wally. He says Wally, I think he also says Eva, but at the same time, that movie works great and everyone loves that character. So it's not that it's not possible, just a lot harder. So it could work, but again, difficult. Then you have what might seem like a pretty minor detail I'm pointing out, but I think it actually has really large ramifications, which is the fact that Frisk doesn't have eyes. I think it's a really interesting like character design part, where if I just see two lines and then a line underneath it, I'm like, oh, that's Frisk. Like, it's kind of iconic in a sense of like that. Well, there's more aspects of Frisk there. I count like the shirt and whatever, but I don't know, something about that face is kind of adorable, and so that's why most animators and other things like try to adapt it with the just closed eyes. Like, you can see what I'm doing here. Like, those aren't real eyes; they're just triangles, sort of combining the closed eyes with a little bit more expression to make them so they have a little more emotion. But that's the problem. When you don't have eyes, you're getting rid of a huge part of why people emphasize with characters. If you ever wondered why Disney movies have characters with such giant eyes, like they take up like a third of their head, if you ever wondered why, it's because when you are looking at a character and you want to get the emotion from a character, you typically look at their eyes. Like, that is probably the most telling aspect of a person in terms of their character and their emotions. If you want to go back to Wally again, like, yeah, he doesn't speak and he's not like he's a robot, but at the same time he has those big binocular eyes with, I think they have like little wipers on the side to give him sort of like expressions, and all of that really helps you sympathize with him as a character. Like, you can tell when he's sad, you can tell when he's angry, but if you have your eyes closed the entire time, a large number of emotions are just lost. Like, I can't have Frisk open their eyes wider to show shock. You could actually see right before Sans turns to dust and disappears, I have this like 1 or 2 frames of Frisk looking shocked, and it's just like 2 black like holes in her face. Like, I've just made them bigger to show that she's shocked, and if you pause it right there, it just looks off. It doesn't look right. Whereas if it was actually just 2 eyes, it would work better. But yeah, that's what it's not, again, it's not a deal breaker, but it makes it much harder. In fact, it would actually probably be helpful in certain ways. For example, if you wanted to push more of a genocide or maybe a neutral run angle, if you wanted to make it so that the characters weren't sure of whether Frisk was going to kill them or attack. Imagine you're Sans and you're seeing Papyrus walk away with this human. You can't quite tell. You just look at their face and there's no expression. There's nothing on them. They don't speak. You can't tell if they're going to murder your brother or they're going to be best friends. You don't know. And that could be a really interesting angle. But again, for a protagonist, you want to understand them. You want to understand their emotions. You want to know what their motivations are. You don't want to be guessing things like that. But finally, like I said earlier, Frisk is just largely a player avatar. They don't have any specific characteristics. You can't tell, like, oh, Frisk is brave, or Frisk's aggressive, or Frisk is all of those things, because Frisk is a player avatar and doesn't really have a character. But if you were, again, to make them a protagonist, you would need to give them some sort of characteristic. Like, is Frisk brave? Would they, if they saw someone like Undyne coming to attack them, would they react in sort of a panic, in fear, afraid that Undyne is going to hurt them, or are they going to be brave, or are they going to sort of take it in more of a comedic way where they almost take it like a joke, where they don't even respond. Undyne's just like, "Are you ready to fight?" And then Frisk just gives them a thumbs up. I think that's exactly. If you want to know exactly what an idea, look up Undyne the Untrying, I believe it's called. That's the sort of emotional, like, the sort of comedic level I'm talking about, in terms of just having Frisk not react at all. And those, like, the two extremes. Like, do you play Frisk as being like an actual child that's afraid and scared in this world of monsters, or do you play it like a joke where Frisk doesn't care? Frisk's just gonna get through it. You need to establish these things, because that's, like, you have to figure out how to create this character. How are they gonna act in these situations, and what is their character arc? You can't just have Frisk just walk through the underground escape, and that's it. That's the end of the movie. You need to have them have some sort of emotional arc. Luke didn't just blow up the Death Star. He had to lose his, not his parents, his uncle, and wasn't it right? Yeah. He had to lose his adopted farmer parents. Or were they? Whatever, it's not important. He had to lose Obi-Wan Kenobi. He had to learn about the ways of the Force. You get the idea. He has to grow as a character. You can't just have someone go to the end. That you have to have a character arc. And at the moment, because Frisk doesn't have a character, they don't have a character arc. Now, you could switch in what the player typically goes through. The player typically goes through an arc, specifically for Undertale, because they start the game with the expectation that it's just a traditional RPG. Oh, these are monsters, I fight the monsters, I kill the monsters, and then typically by the end of the ruins, they realize, oh shoot, this is not just a typical RPG. Killing monsters actually has ramifications. I shouldn't do this. But, and then they go back, reset, and do everything correctly, and that's why Flally points that out. But how would you'd have to figure out a way to do that arc properly over the course of the entire story without using the save mechanic. Or, I mean, you could use the save mechanic, but we'll discuss that later. Okay, so I was pointing out a bunch of issues with Frisk as a protagonist. But what other options do you have? Well, you have Sans. He has a very clear character. He has a very clear, well, not a clear arc, but he has the hintings of an arc that could be there, and it was only really seen in the Genocide run, where he has maybe not a hatred, but at least a distrust for humans, seen in lines like, "You be dead where you stand," and things like that. The fact that he judges you at the end of the hall, The fact that he's not, he kind of can see past the world being reset and things like that. And so there are really interesting ideas there, and he's also a fan favorite character, so that's a big thing too. And like I said, in terms of a genocide run, it might be interesting to see everything through his perspective, looking at Frisk and seeing sort of this emotionless monster and just being afraid of what they would do to all the other characters and all the other monsters. However, Sans is not a good idea as well. Why? Because he's not an active participant in the narrative. He says he helps out. Like, again, there's that scene in the diner where he, it's not a diner, whatever, when they're, and he says, like, he's been helping out Frisk, and, haven't I been doing a great job? You're here, aren't you? But, like, we don't really see that, and you could include it. You could show scenes where he's helping, but he's not pushing the story forward unless it's a genocide route. Well, even then he's not pushing it forward, but he has more of an active role there. And again, it would seem off to have the protagonist do basically nothing for 90% of the story. So, if I had to create a suggestion, I would probably combine the two. Have Frisk as the main protagonist, but treat it more as like a comedy duo. Well, not comedic duo necessarily, although there would be a lot of humor involved. But use Sans for elements where you need a voice, and because he has a sort of teleportation ability, you can bring him into all sorts of different scenes, and he can easily fit into wherever you need it to be. So if you need to get across some exposition about how the monsters ended up in the underground, you could just do that. If you need an emotional element where Frisk is coming to terms with the fact that Sans truly doesn't trust them and it's only because of his promise that he's doing that, then you have a scene like that. It's using Sans more as a emotional weight while Frisk is still pushing the story forward. That could work, but that's only the protagonist. We have a lot more issues. Like, what run do you even adapt? I talked briefly about, oh, well, you could do a genocide route, or, oh, you could do neutral, but this is the problem of Undertale has, in my opinion, 3 very iconic moments. Probably more, but if you had to limit it down, I would say 3. And it's each ending. Each of the endings, I think, is equally iconic. You have things like the Sans fight, which is amazing and emotional and incredible. It's part of the reason I did it, even though it might be a little overdone at this point. But yes, that is an iconic moment, and there's a reason it's iconic. It's incredible. But then you also have things like Omega Flowey, which, it's hard to say, but I feel like that might be my favorite moment in the entirety of Undertale, just because of how it caught me off guard when I first see it. You almost bring Asgore to being spared. You almost get away with it. You can almost have the happy ending, and then Flowey just yanks it away, and it enters this almost horror vibe. It threw me for such a loop when I first played it that I couldn't even believe what I was doing. It was insane, and it is probably the moment that sticks out in my head the most. And then you have the true pacifist ending with, like, basically from Asriel on, like, that is the ending you want, that is satisfying and happy and everything works out and it's just so great. But you can't do all of them. You have to pick, because certain things lead up to other things. You can't do an Omega Flowey ending and then do Asriel, unless, again, you were just gonna reset the world and play through it again and things like that, which, we're talking about a movie here. Like, you can't fit more than, like, even the a plain neutral or pacifist run. You can't, like, fitting that into 90 minutes to 3 hours or whatever, like, even that is difficult, let alone trying to do even more to try and get multiple endings. And I remember asking one of my friends, well, two of my friends, if there was an Undertale movie, would they be satisfied if there was not a Sans fight? One of them said, yeah, they would be satisfied if that wasn't there. Another one said they wouldn't. That, like, that is a part of Undertale, and ignoring it is kind of a big mistake. And, that's also hard. If I had to pick something, I would probably try and combine Omega Flowey with Asriel, like try and keep it in the same fight, like he gets all the souls, go through the Omega Flowey fight, and then transition into the Asriel fight. But if worse comes, like if that just doesn't work, then I would just do Asriel, because that is the more satisfying ending. Plus, if it's an Undertale movie, it's probably going to be a kids movie, and you probably don't want to have the little children their pants as Omega Flowey comes on screen. But this brings up another point that I mentioned earlier about the save system. Do you include the save system? Because, of course, the save system's a huge part of Undertale. It's what makes a lot of... it's one of the reasons a lot of people took notice of the game to begin with. The whole, if you went back after killing Toriel and Flowey acknowledges the fact that you did kill her, the fact that Sans can see past saves and resets, the fact that... excuse me. The fact that by acknowledging the fact that there is a save, it almost makes it more real. Like, despite the fact of saying that Flowey says, yeah, it is just save data, but when you finish the pacifist ending, you feel like you can't erase it now, because that is their world. Ironically, by pointing to the fact that it is fake, it made it feel like a more tangible, real thing. And yes, it's important, but I feel like the way I see the save system at this point is the reason it's so powerful is because save systems are a norm. When you play a video game, you expect a save system. And so the reason that when Undertale breaks that, when it says, like, oh, this isn't just a save system, like, characters acknowledge it, there are ramifications for doing it, breaking that norm is what makes it powerful. But if you were to have a movie, you'd have to introduce the save system, you'd have to give justification and reason for it, and that doesn't make any sense. There's really no reason to have it at that point. Other than, again, for the narrative reasons. But because you're not subverting anything, like, save systems are not a trope in movies, so having it, I think, is kind of a mistake. And I think I'm running out of time here, so I'll cover just one small last thing, which is, what would you cut out? Because is trying to make Undertale a movie even a good, feasible idea? Because there's so many elements that you probably have to cut out. Can you keep Muffet? Can you keep the Temmie village? Can you keep Lesser Dog and Greater Dog? You can't take them out of the movie. Well, you can't take them out of Undertale. You can't. There's so many tiny elements in Undertale that I feel like ignoring any of them makes it lesser. Like, to somebody, Temmie is just a character that they don't care about, but to someone else, Temmie is the reason they care about Undertale. But anyway, those are my general thoughts on how, like, an Undertale movie adaptation could occur. Just a little thought experiment. I thought it would be fun. it was kind of fun. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed, then give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, watch some others, maybe follow me on Tumblr. I don't know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.